Good day. For today, we will talk about principles of instructional designing. Begin with the end in mind. This is one of the most perennial teaching and learning principles whenever we attend our professional education courses. It simply means that whenever we want to design instruction or how teaching and learning should occur, we should always first think what would be the end product of this, meaning what would we want our students to learn at the end? What would we want our students to demonstrate at the end? What would we want our students to navigate at the end? This kind of principle works and has been translated into many forms whenever we do our instructional planning. One form of us teachers setting the end in mind is through designing what we call learning outcome. Learning outcome is a bit different in terms of instructional objective in a sense that learning outcome follows a more detailed structure than an instructional objective. A learning outcome is a formal statement of what students are expected to learn. Learning outcomes are said to be observable, measurable, and doable. It means that whenever we construct a learning outcome, it is something that can be demonstrated back by students and we can observe it. The basic structure of a learning outcome is composed of a stem, verb, content, and context. For example, if the learning outcomes of this instructional video are the two, I should compose this learning outcome in such way it will follow a logical structure. At the end of the lesson, students are able to create a learning outcome specific to their specialization and evaluate learning outcomes suitable to learners-based knowledge. On these examples of learning outcome, we can derive the basic structure of it. This particular phrase is what we call the stem. It should emphasize the doer of the learning outcome. And in terms of student-centered learning, the doer should be given emphasis more in terms of the students. These two here are what we call the verb. So the verb demonstrates the action that the learner should demonstrate after the teaching and learning episode. It is something that we should also observe in assessing whether we have reached the learning outcome or the intended expectation for our learners. The learning outcome here is what we call the focus. Focus for most of the time is the topic or the emphasis of the teaching and learning episode that we did. The last part is what we call the context. The context set the premise of how or when the learning outcome should be demonstrated. For example, create a learning outcome could just be attributed to an objective, but putting a context that the learning outcome should be specific to their specialization is a context and therefore does not simply be categorized as objective but a learning outcome. The same goes for the second example. Evaluating learning outcome could just be categorized as an objective, but since we set the premise that they should evaluate learning outcome which are suitable to learners' schema or baseline knowledge, therefore, this one follows the basic structure of a learning outcome. The Bloom's taxonomy of objective can help us out on constructing our learning outcome. Bloom's taxonomy organizes the process that are expected for students to demonstrate in terms of their cognitive behavior. It is important to note that learning outcomes are always cognitive in nature. So we can borrow some verbs from the Bloom's taxonomy to construct our learning outcome. For most of the time, when we are constructing topical outcome, we can start by having verb on the lower order thinking skills of remembering, understanding, or applying. But in terms of the course outcome or the subject outcome, which means that it would cover the expected behavior of the student after finishing a whole subject or a whole course or a whole program, we should construct learning outcome which would be from the higher order thinking skills. These are the ACEs of Bloom's taxonomy. ACE for analyze, create, and evaluate. Now, these learning outcomes could also be our baseline on constructing our activities whenever we design our instructional plan. Our activities can be categorized into three. We have the introductory, opening, or initiatory activity. For most of the time, these activities are intended to, number one, draw the attention or interest of students to make them motivated, learn more. And number two, to draw out from them baseline knowledge, what we call the schema. What do they know about this particular topic? Now, once we draw out this baseline knowledge from our student, we can now proceed with another activity, which is called developmental, deepening, or cognitive activity. This kind of activities are structured to deepen further knowledge of our student. We can use the baseline knowledge they have in the introductory activity as an anchorage for them to synthesize new knowledge, combining it with new information presented to them or through these kinds of activities. Another activity that we can do is the application, concluding, or summarizing activity. This part of the activity is sometimes used as a form of reflection of what has been learned all throughout the teaching learning episode. It can also be used for students to construct or design ways on how would they apply the knowledge that they have learned all throughout the conduct of the teaching and learning episode. The whole point is that all of these type of activities should be for student engagement. And when we say student engagement, in terms of teaching and learning, it does not necessarily mean physical engagement, but rather cognitive investment. Cognitive investment would mean students take time and effort to really learn and deepen their knowledge. And this can be done through the student-centered learning paradigm or approach, where the teacher, through his or her instructional design, provide an environment for students to collaborate with them and with their fellow students so that they can use their baseline knowledge to synthesize new knowledge and to come up with new knowledge. This way, they would be active and reflective learners. Some of the activities that can be done to engage students in learning are work-along activities. Work-along activities are activities that we give as a complement or a pair to materials that they have to explore. For example, we ask them to watch a short video clip, or we ask them to read particular learning material, guide questions written on a worksheet or a graphic organizer that they should accomplish during or after reading the material is an example of a work-along activity. We can also ask them to do short essays, concept maps for organizing of thoughts, think aloud modeling, or allow them to speak out what they think about what they read. We can also do think, pair, and share, wherein we ask them to share what they have learned on the learning material. We can also do group work and discussion, wherein we emphasize or give role to the group. The group can be a brainstorming group which has the purpose of generating ideas, or it could be a questioning group which has the purpose of generating questions. We can also do carousel brainstorming, wherein we change group mates every certain period of time so that they can explore more ideas with their classmates. So what happens in a carousel brainstorming is that members of group stay on their group for a particular period of time and then move to another group after the time limit to share what they have learned from the previous group. We can also do gallery walk, wherein we ask our students to visualize their idea and post it through the learning environment we have, either classroom or virtual, and we let other students to view and observe the organization of ideas that they put into their visualization. We can also do video segments wherein we ask our student to analyze a particular scenario projected on a particular video clip. This kind of activities are, for most of the time, also the one we do as formative assessment. Formative assessment are the activities we do to assess what are they learning so far while teaching and learning is occurring. It is something, or these are set of activities done while instruction is ongoing. Formative assessment builds the right knowledge through corrective feedback and constructive feedback. The formative assessment culminates into a summative assessment, meaning whatever feedback was given on the formative assessment, it contributes on how well they will perform well on a summative assessment, because the summative assessment is a culmination of what activities has been done in the formative assessment. Summative assessment can be of two types, traditional and authentic. Traditional assessment are paper and pencil tests, like objective type of tests, multiple choice, true or false, alternative response, completion type. While authentic assessment is non-traditional and may draw out from student presentation, from their reflection, from their analysis of a case, or their reflection on their performance, or it can draw out from a context of their community and ask them to propose a solution to a capstone project, to make analysis of a situation through a video segment, or through a performance-based assessment, or to generate solution through research through problem-based learning assessment. So, how do you decide now on what kind of assessment you will do? Again, begin with the end in mind. Assessments are there to assess and to measure whether you have obtained and achieved the learning outcome for the student. I hope this session have helped you in terms of reflecting on the principles of instructional design. Thank you and good day.